For those of you who don't speak German, by the way, and are wondering what a Konto is, I'm told it's an account. So this is an account, is what that name means.
Huh.
Or I am an account.
I'm going to guess that this is going to be a Chinese colony.
It is a Chinese colony. So
just using my predictive powers, and I think, oh, look at that.
There you go. So round 3 of the January Casuals tournament. Terra Incognita and the voice you just heard, Black Magic, with you for this one. This is between Rahi, Ich bin ein Konto, Mystics and Vampirus. Rahi and Ich bin ein Konto both on 2 wins from their first 2 games, so this is really a clash of the titans here. What do you make of this Mac, Black Magic? Nothing really shines for me.
There's a scientific spot in the middle which would be okay, but you really don't have any prices to take advantage of that. I don't know that I actually like Rahi's spot right there for 2 reasons. Number 1, you've got a high and a, it looks like, I can't tell, low carbon. But the nice thing is you plop down on the silicon, you've got high price for that, so you can get over the hump really quickly to HQ3, and then you could go into a power scavenger if you like.
Yeah, I wonder if that's what Rahi's going to do, because there's no aluminum nearby at all. Basically, she's not going to be running on any aluminum this game at all, unless she ships it right the way across the map. So it's interesting to see. I wonder whether she's going into chems.
And I like that I love that as well. So this is actually, oh, you know what? The other interesting found in this particular case, there's not very much aluminum in the map. It would have been very interesting to be a robot and plop right in the middle of all of that aluminum on that little pad right above Vampirus, and just cause all sorts of issues for everybody else.
Yeah, so Ich bin ein Konto going into that second tile just next to his aluminum. He's gone a water pump. I'm not sure whether I might have gone for the second aluminum at least temporarily there, because it is going to be good quite soon in this game. Nobody gets any aluminum discounts, everyone needs it in full to upgrade, and Rahi doesn't have any at all. So I think aluminum is going to be a market to watch this game.
I think I would agree with you in that case, where 2 aluminum could help you to expand very quickly, and then you can rotate that one into water. So that's a fantastic one in terms of grabbing it. I would almost even be tempted to grab, well, I don't know that I would really grab a third, but it would be extremely tempting just because you could rotate that into either water or power.
Yeah, and I think, Ich bin ein Konto, seeing that, I think he's going for the 2 water. He's also the first into the power market, so he's going to get those 2 wind turbines up and running. There are ways to shut that down. There's circuit overloads in this game and EMPs as well, and they're not gooned right now. But nobody choosing to do that for the time being at least. And he's not in very much debt either, paying off 300 of that debt a second nearly, and he's now at 3,000, so he's going to be making money from that very soon indeed.
So there is one move, if we want to take a look at Rahi's base, there's one move that I don't agree with. If you go with the spot that Rahi founded, I think the answer is you don't take the metal mine. That's going to be taking an extremely long time to get to you, and it's almost taking 1 full fuel a second.
Yeah, so despite the fact that aluminum is at $50 a second, it's actually losing money right now with that high tile, given the shipping costs and given the power costs as well of getting that up and running. So with fuel at 110, that's going to be really painful in the long term, especially as the price is being driven up further of fuel by those 2 chem refineries, which are rapidly losing value.
The other thing that I think I would do for Rahi is skip the aluminum. You don't necessarily need to have it, and go play to your strengths in this particular case. Let other people, if you leave the aluminum price up, sure, it's a bitter pill to swallow to buy all of that aluminum, but somebody else is going to get into that market. And so just play to your strength, which in this case would be getting a line of solar panels and take advantage of that high power price. Now that being said, Rahi is, because the power wasn't necessarily addressed, because you're using so much fuel, you're already in 67k of debt.
Yeah, it's a lot, isn't it? and the food is climbing as well. Fuel is also climbing and has been climbing for a while. We are going into Rahi is going into those reactors at least, which is going to help her out a little bit to get some money from that. But even so, it's going to be really hard. Ich bin ein Konto was making money from the power. He did get the circuit overloads though. As we mentioned, those were available along with the EMPs, and they are going to shut down his power for a good long while at HQ3, so no power money, at least for the time being. And power continues to climb. Mystics actually is in a really good position, I think, in this game. He was first to HQ3. He's been just gradually paying off his debt. Again, the circuit overload comes down on their power as well. But again, just like not in too much debt, but far enough ahead of the curve that it might not matter. I'm a little bit concerned though that they're continuing to produce iron when they have a stockpile of nearly 700 of it, and are not selling that down and buying steel instead.
I would like to point out that somebody used their black market cooldown in this particular case to use some pirates. Let me see who bought the pirates. Hopefully, that's actually what I would have done in the case of Rahi. Where if you have pirates or a mule, you could skip that aluminum, start to take it from other people, and get by at least until HQ5. The other thing you can do if you wanted to approach it is if people don't go into that market, then you just end up skipping it altogether, and you could always hack it down if you really needed to. The other thing I'd like to point out is something that you had mentioned before with Ich bin ein Kanto. Is they have the water tile right there, which could be aluminum.
Yeah,
and I think
absolutely.
that if they had made that into an aluminum tile, they could have been sitting on a lot of aluminum, and then as soon as somebody upgrades, that's where you can sell down and take all that profit. So
interesting auction.
That would have been better.
Interesting auction here. Hologram goes for 18,000. I wonder how much value that's going to have later on in the game.
That is going to have very little value, I think, because spies are going to be really cheap. The only possible thing you could do is take a look at the colony, and there is an unbelievable spot off-world right there.
Because no one's gonna see that as an optimization center and think, I wonder with the 50% bonus whether that could actually be an off-world. It's not going to be very well disguised. But yeah, I see what you mean. Like putting an off-world there. Lots of that's basically a permanent boost, isn't it, to an off-world when you put it there. Like that's a permanently boosted off-world.
Now, unfortunately for that, though, you have very cheap dynamite, you've got some circuit overloads, and then you also have extremely cheap EMPs. I don't really understand how black market has been so cheap. Perhaps people just haven't used their cooldown.
Yeah, I think that's why. People not using their black market cooldown. Ich bin ein Konto first till HQ5. So they're going to be in a reasonable position. Power's stuck at 200, which is really interesting. Nobody's really been able to make any moves on the power market, and part of that has been the circuit overload, but part of it has just been that people haven't been wanting to commit into it. And I think there's not a whole lot of money to be made for people in power anymore. There's just debt to be paid off at this point. Only Vampirus has a manageable amount of debt.
Rahi is about to make a killing on power because Rahi, as soon as daylight comes, you look at Rahi,
the superconductor,
and they have superconductor, and as soon as it hits, it is
1,500 a second.
1,500 a second, and that is really going to boost them back into the game because everybody has been out of the power market. This is a fantastic time to go circuit overload people to keep that, see if you can prop it up a little bit more.
Yeah.
Also on Rahi's base, remember, typically we like, you like to see a lot of triangles in this particular case. Now, for something like this, this is still okay. The goon placement's really good. If you're going to get hit by an EMP, it's probably going to be a little bit closer to your base. The other way that you could be doing this, though, is you build your buildings in a line and goon the middle one. That way, you don't get hit by that really powerful circuit overload. And that circuit overload right now could take out 2 out of the 3 panels that way. But if you build it in a line, you lose a little bit of adjacency, but then you can't get that power shut down. So
Yeah, I think that's completely fair enough. It's the sort of the hedging the bet slightly, because yeah, if you get hit, then only one gets shut down.
And that's also another that also goes for Mystics in terms of that triangle of wind. That would have been fantastic as a line, and you goon the middle, because if you notice, Mystics has not been able to build any or keep power online at all.
And they're now in D levels of debt. They've kind of fallen out of this game a little bit, behind in upgrades. Has the Pleasure Dome that they just picked up from an auction, but that 133,000 of debt is going to be a big problem for them going forward, I think. Vampyrus making a little bit of power money, and Rahi almost paid off her whole 90,000 or so of debt just with that single superconductor play. She's going to be getting to HQ5 as well very shortly indeed, and right hot on the heels of Ich Bin ein Konto in this game.
And Ich Bin ein Konto just made a fantastic move in the rush for teleportation. Suddenly, instead of losing 2.2 fuel a second, you are making a ton of money as soon as all of those trucks come in.
Yeah,
so
wow,
that was a fantastic move.
That's an awful lot of stuff that was being shipped for Ich Bin ein Konto. And that debt really matters at this point as well, like 136,000 of debt now, with that 20% sea-level debt tick, is really problematic. They just got their power shut down as well, so that's going to be a little bit of a problem, but I think they're making enough money that they can sort of ride that and just sort of power through it, and they're going to get cheap stock out of it as well, that they can buy up, which will be really beneficial.
Okay, so let's take a look at Vampyrus. So in this case, Vampyrus is making power money at this particular point. It's not, you start making about 600 a second from power. In terms of their placement, however, I do have to question, I'm sure it might have just been a financial issue, but you have a wind turbine next to a solar panel, and so unfortunately it's not going to give you the adjacency. It's better to just go ahead and pick one. Whichever one you can do in that particular case. I prefer wind in that case because it's always going to stay on, but if you can't do it and you've got the silicon for it, just pick one and go for it. The other thing that I would like to say about Vampyrus is, unfortunately, it was a fantastic spot here, but they never really got into using all of those water tiles right next to their base. If you look, there are 2 chems that are remotely located, and look at the price of oxygen, look at the price of fuel. This is a point where you look around the map and you say, well, Rahi claims something all the way across the map, and they're shipping a whole lot all the way across the map for water. This is where you want to keep it close to your base.
And also that food, I mean, they'd be so much better as reactors. Like, look at the price of food, $31. Reactors would be bringing in, what, 172, and I think they've realized that now, so Vampyrus is going to switch those 2 food out for the 2 reactors, but at this point, it's a little bit too late. We have a Marsquake, which I think is going to benefit Rahi, who has a bunch of stuff in resources that she's now going to be able to make even more money from at this point.
A really quick note for Marsquakes. For people that don't know, all of the prices go up. Here's the thing. One thing I would love to see Ich Bin ein Konto do. He had 115. He has 115k or now 115k or so. That's not in any sort of resource. Whenever you see a Marsquake, really quickly look around the map. Throw all of your money into something that somebody else isn't producing. Essentially, it's the equivalent of a hack. It's making you a ton of money, but when you keep it in cash, it doesn't do anything for you. So that's the first thing. Every time you see a Marsquake,
I will say,
really quickly scan around and just throw it in.
I will say that that's really difficult to do, though. In the time that a Marsquake hits, you've got to identify a market, make sure nobody else is in it or has a stockpile of it, which is difficult, and then you've got to buy in before it ends. So I can see why that wouldn't happen necessarily in a game like this, in a game that's so chaotic. It's really difficult to see. I'm going to comment a little bit on Mystic's base here, because there's some really difficult things I think that, some sort of unintuitive things that maybe they could improve on. The steel mill next to the metal mines would be fine if you were a robot, but not as an expansive player. You don't get any adjacency from those. Having said that, the steel mill should still be on with steel at $140 now. But even so, and again, the 2 glass with the chems next to it, the chems really needs to be somewhere else, and that's not really going to be making you any money as a single tile. So just things to look at there. Ich bin ein Konto gets the buy on Mystics, which is a big deal. Saved up enough money for that, and now Mystics is going to be a subsidiary, and I think quite a valuable subsidiary as well as an expansive player. However, Rahi is in an off-world, which so this is a really good case study of what happens when you invest your money in certain ways at HQ5. Ich bin ein Konto goes into a subsidiary, but instead Rahi decides not going to go into that, going to go into an off-world instead. Now, off-worlds aren't tremendous. Interestingly, Rahi is launching aluminum right now, or is going to be as soon as that begins.
Now, here's something that I do not like the move into the off-world. Not only because the launches aren't very good, but the off-world for Rahi costs 130k in order to build that off-world. So in order to pay that off, Rahi has to have that's a good 3, maybe 4 launches at that particular point.
And also it boosts the carbon price, and she's going to make some money as well from that carbon price. But Ich bin ein Konto is also making a bunch of money from that carbon, and is in fact auto selling the carbon. So I guess, I mean, there's a couple of trade-offs here. So building an off-world first does boost the carbon price, which helps your opponent, but it also means that it's much more expensive for your opponent, who's also a scavenger, to build an off-world. So there is that benefit as well.
However, you have Ich bin ein Konto. Well, fortunately for Ich bin ein Konto, or unfortunately for Ich bin ein Konto, is the fact that they're in D debt.
Yeah,
and that's
I was going to mention there's a tick coming right now as well, so this is going to be a big debt tick. It's going to be something of the order of 75,000, 72,500, so 310,000 worth of debt now. So that either, I mean, if he doesn't commit to paying that off, that puts them on a clock in this game.
Well,
so they're going to have to end this game.
It actually doesn't. Here's why. You've propped up your shares, so the minimum you're going to get is at about a $28 share, and that's going to keep going up. That's if you completely spiral out because of all of the shares that they own at the moment. And Vampires
doesn't it sink below that if you have enough debt? Even though the sort of the stock's own bit is $28 at the moment for Ich bin ein Konto. I think it does fall further than that if you're in enough debt.
You have a negative Can you have a negative base price? I know at one point you couldn't.
Okay,
so
I think you can, and I remember this coming up, I think, on Blues' stream once, and I think Blues was the person who sort of gave me that information, but I'm not absolutely sure.
Well, I guess we're going to find out.
We might well find out in this game, because Ich bin ein Konto, Rahi does have 5 stock into Ich bin ein Konto as well. So it's going to be interesting to see, and good move from Rahi to get that stock early before the price goes up too much from buying Vampirus, at least in the short term before it crashes because of the debt again.
Well, so in this particular case, the Ich bin ein Konto did manage to get to land a circuit overload, and I think that circuit overload was probably given to them by a Vampirus. So this is an interesting case where Ich bin ein Konto is not going to be able to use the black market. However, if Rahi or Vampirus continue to attack their off-world,
it was actually Rahi's circuit overload that I think gave Ich bin ein Konto that cooldown just before, in fact. So it was pretty much a trade of cooldowns, or trade of black market things there, but that's really good for Rahi because Rahi has thinking machines, as well as Ich bin ein Konto being in D levels of debt. And there goes the dynamite down. That was a very cheap dynamite that cost 4,000, and it wasn't even Rahi, it was Vampirus who got that down. So it's going to be interesting to see. Rahi is actually not far away from the buy here on Ich bin ein Konto. There's another debt tick coming for Ich bin ein Konto, which is going to be something of the order of $100,000. It's going to be, and that's going to crash the stock price so much, despite all of the stock that Ich bin ein Konto owns. There is the debt tick. It's 96,000, and now that price is falling as Rahi's cash stockpile increases, and the percentage is all the way up now nearly at 90%. So I think, all else being equal, Ich bin ein Konto maybe might get to the buy on Vampirus, but they're still quite a long way away. They don't have an offworld.
So Ich bin ein Konto, the mistake I think was going after the buy on Vampirus versus Rahi. Unfortunately, what happens is you aren't going after the person that owns 5 shares in you. If Ich bin ein Konto had gone after Rahi, maybe they could have done something to get all their stock back and limp along. But in this case, I mean, just being in so much debt and then not being able to afford to repair their offworld. That was the death blow.
And it wouldn't have been worth it for them to repair their offworld either, because Dynamite is at 10k right now, and they were in D levels of debt, so the other players know that that can't possibly be defended. So Rahi is going to take this one. Vampirus, unfortunately, not with the income to be able to compete with this, and also the Thinking Machine's advantage makes it really difficult for Vampirus to compete, as well as the 2 subsidiaries. So Rahi taking this Clash of the Titans, and that's kind of what it was. Ich bin ein Konto to get out to an early lead in this one, but Rahi able to take it away with the patent advantage, and eventually the win.
One more note. This won't actually end up mattering, of course. But if Rahi decided to sell out three stock, then she could go ahead and finish the game right now in terms of a tiebreaker. Versus waiting for the rest of the, Vampirus doesn't have enough money to, even if you sell out, they don't have enough money to buy 6 shares in you. So even if you sell all the way out, they have no possible hope of being able to finish you off before you can finish them off. So
absolutely. That's one way in which she could win slightly more quickly, Rahi. But it's not gonna make too much of an impact in terms of the actual destination of the victory. This launch, I think, will do it. Here's the launch. It's 390 against 399, so there's the win for Rahi. She takes game number 3 out of 3 so far in this tournament. So Koreans OP, I guess.
So let's just do a really quick recap, just on the bases, because I wanted to talk about Mystics. One of the things that could have really helped Mystics is there were geothermals on the map, and so instead of going into 4 wind, those are 4 tiles that you're not really making a bunch of money on. Instead, I would have liked to see 1, maybe 2 geothermals, and those are easier to defend against circuit overloads. That was the big thing that I saw from Mystics. It was a big debt spiral because they could never keep the wind on, and particularly with that formation, it was easy to circuit overload, take them all out. And then with Vampirus keeping everything, keeping all of those water claims and more claims closer to your base, I think would have helped to help them out. And then the other tiles there, just doing like either a wind or a solar for there. And then Ich bin Konto, essentially it was fantastic. It was a fantastic early sort of thing, but somehow debt got away from them, and that ended up costing them the game.
I think it's just about riding that debt line, isn't it? And Ich bin ein Konto was on the wrong side of it, taking those enormous debt ticks. I think maybe if they'd managed to sort of keep themselves in B or sort of B or C levels of debt, it might have been okay. Like, would have been able to protect the offworld at least to some extent. But again, like there were several other disadvantages that Ich bin ein Konto had. No thinking machines. That superconductor play from Rahi was really big as well. That got them out of that level of debt, and also the off-world disadvantage too. So well played, Rahi.